everybody, I'm Tabitha and I've read 5 more books. Now, if you're new to this channel and you're looking for my rating scale or an explanation of how I score books, you're going to want to pay attention to the end of this video. In the description down there, there's helpful timestamps that'll let you jump to any of the 5 books I'm about to give a review on or to that timestamp. But we got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. The next book that I actually read in the month of April, which is the 11th book for April, is The Awakening by KL Hagaman. This was independently published in 2019. It's a young adult fantasy novel and it is 354 pages. Your synopsis. As their territory has been thrown into chaos, Princess Lila and her keeper Caryn must find a resolution and return peace to a people in fear. But how do you restore a fallen kingdom if you can't remember it? After an incident of war, Lila has found herself lost in her own mind without her memories. Can Caryn find a way to restore them before it's too late? So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I wasn't crazy about is that there is one character who's written with a sort of regional dialect that can often be tough to read and understand. It's one character, they're a minor character, it's not a big issue, but it's worth mentioning. The second thing I wasn't crazy about for this story is that it has damsel in distress vibes. I'm sensitive to this trope because it's not my favorite. There's a legitimate reason for this trope in this story, and it's spun in a different way, but if you're bothered by this trope, be aware before you read this book. The third thing I wasn't crazy about for this one is the adverbs. I've weighed in on this controversial argument only once before, just to say that I basically have no problem with adverbs, but they can be overused. This book, in my opinion, doesn't overuse them, but it definitely uses them more than some books. So if your team no adverbs, you may be really irritated by that. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say, this is a big one, is that the memory angle is refreshing and it's new and I loved it. It made for a great story and it unraveled in a really, really interesting way. Second thing I liked about this one is the characters. This is the first book in what I assume is going to be a series done right. The unique memory angle makes this intriguing while also introducing you to characters who are going to power the rest of the series just on the fact that you love them. Technically, Caryn is not the main character, but he does drive this story because he's so interesting and he's so well written. He has a backstory that I know is going to make me coming back to this series for a long time. The third thing I like about this series is the magic system. I love when the magic system introduced in a book is intriguing and fresh and new. This one is definitely that. I look forward to watching this grow as the series grows. Who do I think should read this one? Fantasy fans. Yes, all of them. This has epic battles, flying, magic, great characters. This has a little something for every kind of niche fantasy reader. My rating? I gave this one 4 stars. This is going for a very broad category of reader, but it manages to match up with them perfectly. I think every fantasy reader is going to love this one. So 4 stars for The Awakening by KL Hagaman. This next book was recommended based on my most recent 5-star read before the month started. The next and final book I actually finished in the month of April, which makes the 12th book for April, although the second on this video, was Empire by Orson Scott Card. This was a 2016 publication by Tor Books. It is an adult age category science fiction novel and it is 352 pages. This book was recommended based on my 5-star read in March of Speaker for the Dead, also by Orson Scott Card. Your synopsis. The American empire has grown too fast, and the fault lines at home are stressed to the breaking point. In this dystopian fiction, a war of the worlds between the left and the right will collapse into an actual war. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I didn't like is that this story kind of lacks character development. I feel like we were just scratching the surface of every one of these characters instead of getting a deep insight into any of them. I believe it served a purpose. I think it was done intentionally, but I personally would have liked a little more background on some or all of the characters to help me connect to them better. The second thing I didn't like about this one is the thinking. There was a character having deep thoughts and concerns that, in my opinion, went on entirely too long. By this point, I was already invested in the story because it's well more than 50% of the way through. I liked the character enough to listen anyway, but really it was too big of a break from the story for my tastes. The third thing I can say I didn't particularly like about this one were the action scenes. That's not to say they aren't well written, because they were. It's just that they didn't always seem to fit. We were telling a political story, and sometimes the action almost overtook that and took center stage. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing I need to say here is that the afterword of this book is amazing. Like, world-changing, mind-shatteringly, eye-openingly amazing. I'm underselling it. Really, if you decide, based on the description, that this book is not for you, do yourself a favor and Google the title and the author and the word afterword, and I bet you're still going to love the afterword, even if the book's not for you. It's amazing commentary on politics in this country, it's insightful, and it made me think. The second thing I like about this book is that it's controversial on purpose. This book takes a hard look at a dystopian future based squarely in American politics. That means it's putting some political aspects of our culture on blast. It's controversial, it knows it's controversial, and it works for this story. The third thing I can say I liked about this one is the ending. I actually like the way this one ended, which isn't really going to surprise anyone who's read it and who knows what kind of endings I like. The messages were clear, the warning signs that point to this dystopian future were clear, and I kept thinking about it even after I closed it and walked away from it. I will say I'm actually disappointed to hear this book has a sequel, because I liked the ending that much. Who do I think should read this one? If you're a reader who's interested or can handle political books, I think you're going to like this one. If, however, you're someone who's angered by extreme politics or has overly sensitive opinions to politics, you probably want to steer clear of this one. My rating? I had to give this one 3 stars. Remember, that's not to say that I don't enjoy it, but just to say that this falls into a niche audience. This one is marketed as science fiction, partially because of the dystopian angle and partially because it's Orson Scott Card, and I just feel like it's not going to appeal to all science fiction fans. But it is a great book for looking at dystopian future for America and American politics. So I had to go 3 stars for Empire by Orson Scott Card. The next book I read, which is actually the first book I read to kick off the month of May, was Last Memoria by Rachel Emma Shaw. This book is coming from an independent publisher in May of 2020, so it's coming out really soon this month, so get on there and order it. It is a young adult age category fantasy novel, and it is 253 pages. Your synopsis. There's nothing Cyrilla hates more than stealing memories, but the king forces her to do just that to keep his subjects in line. Follett has a 6-month void in his memories, and he will stop at nothing to get them back. Together, they'll learn one important lesson. Everybody lies. What didn't I like about this story? Well, the first thing I can say is that there are a few grammatically awkward sentences that might force you to reread. It only happens 1 or twice. It's not really a big deal. I do have other weaknesses to point out, but I thought I'd mention this one because I know some of you are a little more grammar sensitive than others. The second thing I didn't particularly like about this one actually is something I thought I wouldn't like that I ended up liking. Going off the synopsis alone, I was really afraid this book was going to be too much like Memory Thief, which was problematic and earned a 2-star rating from me when it came out. They actually are very, very different. So if you, like me, maybe didn't love Memory Thief, read the synopsis and worried this would go there, I need you to know that this isn't really going to be a big problem. So what did I like about this one? The first thing I liked is that this one has a dual point of view storyline that works. I've seen that done a lot, but this one is done differently, and I loved the way it shaped the story. Second thing I liked about this one, the messages and themes, which are 2 of my favorite things in a book, in this one are huge. Really, the entire book could be driven by the question, if you had a chance to cut one thing out of your memory, would you? That is going to drive a book full of big messages, big lessons, and big themes that I think you're going to love. Third thing I liked about this story is the characters. They're so much deeper than they seem on the surface, and I loved diving into their backgrounds. This book has morality questions, which you know is one of my favorite things, especially in young adult. This book definitely tackles one of my favorite questions. Can you be a good person if you have done bad things? Who do I think should read this one? Fantasy readers. This world created here by Memory Reading is absolutely wonderful. It's a great dive into a fantasy world that has been well conceptualized. But I also think science fiction books are going to like this one. If you're looking for books that go outside the realm of plausible into something that forces you to think, you're going to love this. And lastly, if you're a reader who likes big emotions packed into your characters, check out this book. My rating, I had to give this 5 stars. That's the rating I reserve for things that jump genres, and this definitely does that. Definitely check out Last Memoria, which is a next 5-star read from Rachel Emma Shaw. All right, watchers, you just heard me give this book 5 stars. That means if you have a book that you think is similar to this book, please make sure you drop the name of the book and the author down below in the comments, because I'll be choosing books based on this one for next month's TBR. This next book was recommended based on my most recent 5-star read before the month started. The next book I read in the month of May was Donn's Shadow by Caryn Larrinaga. This is a 2019 publication by Twisted Tree Press. It is adult age category mystery thriller, and it is 318 pages. I was sent a paperback copy of this title from the author in exchange for an honest review. This was also a book recommended to me based on my 5-star review in April of the first book in this series, Donn's Hill. Your synopsis. Mackenzie Clare is finally getting a hang of this whole ghost hunting psychic thing, and life in Donn's Hill is actually pleasant. But not everyone loves this town. A world-famous paranormal debunker thinks the psychics in Donn's Hill are all faking, and he's determined to prove it. When a killer strikes, Mac will need all the help she can get to try and find the real murderer before it gets pinned on her. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I didn't like is that this one does require a tad more suspension of disbelief than the previous book. I did find myself wondering how in the world Mac got herself into these awful situations a lot. Second thing I didn't like about this one is Amari. In a book packed with characters who I legitimately love, Amari stands out only because I don't trust her. There's absolutely no concrete reason that I can find for not trusting her, but I can't shake it, and I'm wondering if maybe it'll play out in a book 3. The third thing I can say I wasn't crazy about in this one is the ending. Although I appreciated it, it did share a lot of the same vibes as the first book. I think I'd like to see the second or the third one end very, very differently. You like how I'm assuming there's a third one, Caryn? We need a third one. So what did I like about this one? Everything I said about Donn's Hill and why I love Donn's Hill still applies. That means this book is well written, it has great writing about paranormal events, it never forgets it's a mystery, and it brings horror in a really good way. In addition to all those, the horror in this one goes up a notch. That language mastery in this one really allows the author to dial up the horror and make you feel that scary moments along with Mac. It really is approaching the read it in the sunlight during the daytime kind of vibes. The last thing I loved about this one is the characters, excluding Amari, who I obviously already mentioned. Specifically, I mean Mac, Kit, and Graham. They're realistic, they're flawed in an incredibly important way, and they're so lovable. I adore all of them, and I want more stories with them. So who do I think should read this one? If you're a paranormal fan, the ghosts and the psychics remain well written, but this time we're even bringing in other things that are also well done. If you're a mystery thriller fan and you like to piece together puzzles, check this one out. And lastly, if you are a horror fan, this one is even scarier than the previous one in the series. My rating? I had to go 5 stars again. This book is just going to bring all kinds of readers so much joy. It's definitely a new favorite, and I think you should go get this one. 5 stars for Donn's Shadows by Caryn Larrinaga. All right, watchers, you just heard me give this book 5 stars. That means if you have a book that you think is similar to this book, please make sure you drop the name of the book and the author down below in the comments, because I'll be choosing books based on this one for next month's TBR. The 5th book for this video, which is the 3rd book for May, is One of Us is Next by Caryn McManus. This was a 2020 publication by Delacorte Press for young readers. It's a young adult age category mystery thriller, and it is 377 pages. Your synopsis. A ton of copycat gossip blogs have popped up at Bayview High after the events of One of Us is Lying. But this isn't just an app. It's a game. And it's not another joke. Simon's gone, but someone is copying his legacy in a dangerous way. So what didn't I like about this one? The first thing I can say I didn't like about this one, it's a little too similar to the first one. Some similar is good, for sure, because it makes you remember why you liked the original. In my opinion, this one is a little too similar. Maybe I'm being picky. Second thing I didn't like about this one, the older characters didn't need to be in the story as much as they were. I understand the reasoning for including the original Bayview 4. The readers who adored the first one were coming back for a reason. We love these characters. But at the same time, I felt like there was too much emphasis put on Bronwyn and Nate. This isn't their story. I wanted the emphasis to be on the younger characters and stop going back to the Bayview 4. The third thing I can say I didn't like about this one is the pacing. It's a minor irritation, but I will say you notice the start of the book is a little slow and the end of the book goes really fast. It's just jarring when you compare that against each other. So what did I like about this one? The first thing is the new characters. Knox, Maeve, and Phoebe are absolutely great, and I adore them all. Their viewpoints are different enough that you don't get confused about who is telling which part of the story. They're all interesting. They're all lovable. You definitely root for all three of these teens. Second thing I liked about this story is the game. As twisted and ridiculous as this game of truth or dare is, it's well written and it definitely kept me reading. Third thing I can say I liked about the story is the mystery was solid. As with the first book, this one really lives up to what you're hoping for. The stakes are high and you are invested right from the beginning. So who do I think should read this one? Obviously, if you're a fan of the first book, One of Us is Lying by Caryn McManus, you should definitely be checking out this sequel. My rating? I gave this one 4 stars. This one will appeal to mystery thriller fans, but it definitely needs to be read following the last one. So 4 stars for One of Us is Next by Caryn McManus. Okay, that is it for me, and the last of the books that I read in April, plus the first of the books that I read in May. You know, I knew it was going to happen eventually that I didn't read them in multiples of 5. I'm a little shocked that it took me this long to get there. Thank you for being here. If you are an author or a publisher who had a part in bringing a book into the world that you'd like me to review right here on this channel, check the description in the comments to find where you can drop that. I will warn you that I'm pretty booked on reviews as this channel continues to grow in popularity, but let me know if you have an audiobook because sometimes the wait for those is shorter. Drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye! Regular watchers of this channel will already know this, but I do book reviews every time I've read 5 books. You should know that I don't read just one specific age category or genre. I'm actually a reader of pretty much anything. So I will make sure to tell you what age category, what genre it is, and more importantly, what kind of readers I think will love the book that I'm reviewing. I do use a 5-star rating system to review all my books, so I'd like to take a quick second to tell you about that system. 5-star ratings are reserved for books that I absolutely love that I think transcend genre. In other words, you might love this one even if you don't normally read the genre it's written in. 4-star books, on the other hand, are books that I absolutely love and think are great books, but they're more specific to the genre they are written for. 3-star ratings are for books that I think are good books, but they have a really niche audience. You might not love this one, even if you normally read this genre. 2-star ratings are the ratings I reserve for books that I think are problematic. I do try to explain some of the problems in the What I Didn't Love section so that you know if it's the kind of thing that would really bother you or not. 1-star rating, on the other hand, are reserved for books that I honestly didn't enjoy and can't recommend. They're just not for me.